Hi, welcome. I'm the Queen of Kingsbury, and I'm back with my review on the book Spare by Prince Harry. And I'm going to be doing the next 7 chapters, starting with chapter 23. Please see my previous videos for the reviews of the earlier chapters in the book. I'm doing this review because I had been listening. First of all, I decided I wasn't going to read the book at first, and I had been listening to a lot of reviews and analyses and opinions on the book online, and it was all very interesting. And then I thought, I have so many different opinions on what I was hearing about the review, and I thought, I really think maybe because I'm such a royal fan, for years, for decades, I thought I should read it or listen to it myself. And so I did get the audiobook. This way I could listen to it in the background and take it in and review it from that. So that's why I'm doing this. On top of the fact that I did have so many of my individual opinions that differed from the people that I was watching reviewing it. I think probably because I do have something similar in common with the royal brothers, William and Harry. I too lost my parent. I lost my father when I was 9 in a tragic car accident. And I was told that the next morning by my mother. And there are lots of similarities. Of course, our lives are completely different. I'm not a royal. I'm not a public figure. So those are my reasons for doing this. Okay, so let's just start with chapter 23. Okay, so this chapter continues his story, and he's talking about this safari trip he was on with his brother William, and their main chaperone was this man Marco, along with their nanny at the time, Tiggy. But he's talking about Marco in this chapter, and he really likes Marco. Marco is his brother's primary bodyguard, and he says Marco had a sweet tooth, so he wanted to do something to Marco to impress him. This is very typical, I think, of maybe younger brothers, younger siblings in a family dynamic. Not too unusual. Definitely had a man crush on Marco. I don't think he would dispute it. There's no reason to dispute that. He was a very magnetized man, and people were drawn to him. He was in full charge, and also from a previous chapter, Harry said he was an extreme ginger, so he felt he had something in common with him, and definitely expressed him wanting to be like him. So I feel like maybe this is a good role model for Harry. Definitely he wanted to make Marco laugh. And then he was in the kitchens or the areas where they were making the food, and since he liked puddings or desserts, sweet things, Harry was going to play a trick on him, and Tiggy said something like, good for you, this is going to be great. So he put some Tabasco sauce in a pudding. Now, pudding, I don't know, I know it's a general term in England for dessert, so I'm not sure what kind. I don't remember if he described it. And he really got Marco on that one. He definitely made him laugh, so it was a success. And then later on in that chapter, a leopard appeared, a leopard to the campsite. So everyone was still, and Harry took a step near it. Pretty brave. Some might say stupid, but he was still a kid. He was still 14. Marco grabbed Harry, who took a step and then pulled him backwards. And then, so, Marco was basically doing his job, watching out for the boys. He thought the appearance, Harry thought the appearance of the leopard was a sign from his mother. Okay. Was she still in hiding? No, of course, this is something Harry repeats several times in the book. He's not come to terms yet with her being dead. Chapter 24. He says distance was essential for royals, and yes, that is probably true from everything you hear. They're not full of hugs and kisses, not genuine, a little tap on the cheek. No hugs, but in Africa it was different. So he describes Africa as being the utopia of life, filled with green wildlife and lovely things. This is April 1999, so it is like around the spring break for them, springtime, a break from school during this safari. And he describes Eddie. He was one of the best guides, and he loved it. He loved being a guide, and he knew it, and he shared it. So during this evening, they were in front of a fire, the campfires, and Harry said he could smell marijuana, and he was really surprised, weed. And he said, can I try some? I guess to the group of people, and his brother was horrified. He said Willie was horrified. So, again, is he trying to get attention? I think that's pretty typical of second sons or younger siblings. They're a little goofy, whereas the older brothers or sisters are a little more aware of the rules, especially in front of the grown-ups. And what vulnerabilities do you show? And Harry was definitely trying to get attention, which I guess is natural with a, very popular brother, famous brother. Everybody knew William will someday be king, and he's also older and bigger as they grow up. That's just never going to change. So as it goes on, it's not a problem that he's behaving this way, but an observation that he's being that typical second son. And then, of course, they gave it to him eventually, and he said it was just basil wrapped in paper. I thought that was funny. It was actually a pretty good chapter, beautifully written by the ghostwriter. So chapter 25. His father, Charles, had these friends, Hugh and Emily, in Norfolk, and he talks about them having these 4 sons that are in their country house that they are very close with. And he and his brother, William, scrap with them all the time. So this sounds like a really good, solid, long-time friendship with these 4 boys. They would see this family often, their children growing up together with Harry, and they would play all kinds of games, always outside. Hide and seek, and he said sometimes capture the flag. They would scrap a lot, and all is fair, no rules. He explained it was really good fun. I love that he had this experience with his brother and with these 4 boys. Sometimes he would be fighting as they set up the games with his brother William, and sometimes against William. May I just interject a little anecdote of my own? He really talks about William a lot. Of course, they're brothers growing up together. William is definitely a focal point in this book. Okay, going back. So oftentimes the group, whatever the dynamic was, would gang up on William. He must have been a target for whatever reason. Maybe again they knew he was the chosen one, or the one who is the heir and would be king someday. So I see that being natural, and just knowing a little bit from public life of seeing the boys being interviewed. William is very charismatic. I mean, everybody liked Harry too, I think, but William had a certain something, and that was definitely the first son being born and it raised in a family. So a little more charisma, maybe. He was also older. He loved it, and he loved these times. And sometimes when they ganged up on his brother, he would just go and defend with, all abandon, and he would call himself the Red Mist. Once again, that came up while he was at school also. He would always help his brother and would sense that he got a lot of love from his brother back, and a little bit of embarrassment. Harry feels that William thought it was embarrassing to be saved by his brother. But you know, these were all games. And I don't know, I mean, certainly I wasn't there, but I would think being the little one with two big sisters in that situation often, I think I don't know if it's so much embarrassment or just part of that family dynamic. Just a little observation. So, I don't know, the way he talked about it, it seemed almost like he was insecure with his familial relationships. You know, this is his brother. Was he developing an insecurity? Which could have come from losing a mother. I have to say, you know, even though I experienced that, it was quite normal to feel that way looking back. I sometimes did have doubts, and I don't know if those doubts came about from the mere fact we lost, that tragedy happened, and your mind does get in a certain insecure place. And oftentimes, this I learned through therapy in my later years, that sometimes that insecurities come out in different ways. So, excuse me, I wonder if Harry too was experiencing those insecurities coming out in his observed insecurities with his family, maybe his father, and maybe William too. So he was very sensitive towards his brother, and this was one story that it definitely came out. Okay, so he describes some of these scrapes as escalating, and it was all good fun, and they were lucky to all come out of it alive, so to speak. There were jeeps involved, shotguns, I think fireworks. He talks about setting things off. I'm guessing fireworks. Sounds like great fun. I think they were lucky to have these kinds of friendships in their youth, where they could just be boys being boys out in the countryside. Okay, chapter 26. So he describes a time where he and his brother were, getting at each other, scrapping again with each other, and oftentimes this happened in the back seat of their father's car, I guess with their father driving, because he says there was a security car behind them, but they were in the back seat with their dad driving. And sometimes it got so bad where his father would have to stop on the side of the road, and always tell his brother to get out. And his brother would say, "Why me?" Something to that effect. And he thought his brother was just furious that it would be him who'd have to leave the car and then go in the second car with the security and drive behind them. Again, I think this might be an insecurity. Maybe it was typical for brothers to fight. My sisters and I, like I said, fought a lot. So he turned back because it was William in the car behind him, and would say, he said, thinking I could see the future king of England plotting his revenge. It would be against Harry in the car behind him. Over dramatizing, maybe a little melodrama right here, but if he did truly feel that way, I wonder, not just brothers, it's a difficult time. Teenage years is a difficult time for siblings, and then brothers so close in age with all that was going on that we know at this time. In that chapter, he mentions, his father would insist, mention seatbelts were always worn after mommy disappeared. Okay, So he's still referring to his mother's death as a disappearance. Chapter 27. Harry talks about some of the rituals his family takes for them as a royal family, as a country family, and as aristocrats. Like definitely hunting. Hunting is a royal sport. And he and his brother both had this initiation. He talks about the first time he killed. Gosh, I didn't write it down. I think he said it was a rabbit. And that Tiki, his nanny, was there, and she was blooding him. I guess put some of the rabbit blood across his face. Kind of like a baptism traditions. Almost like boyhood into manhood. And then he describes this stalking initiation that he had with this hunter that they all knew and I guess hunted with. His name was Sandy, and he and his brother called him proper old school, decked out in tweed, etc. And he took Harry stag hunting, and he said this was definitely an initiation. When they struck the stag, Sandy took Harry's head and stuck it inside the carcass. I'm picturing Star Wars or something where they killed and they went inside to be warm. But anyway, it was very dramatic, very dramatic. It was a good description. It was enjoyable to read that. They gutted it with care, and he felt pride in taking care of this because it was well known in the countryside. This was in Balmoral, and it was known there was overpopulation of deer, and if they all lived without any killing, there would be not enough food for all the deer that lived up there. So this was a great experience for him, and his father is quoted in saying to Harry, if you love nature, you have to know when to leave them alone and when to manage it. Interesting. This seems like a great experience for Harry as a royal. And then he says he and Sandy went back at the end of that day and stripped and checked each other's for ticks. And then he describes, ticks have Lyme disease in UK. I didn't know that. I thought it was just still in the northeast of the US, but so they do there too. Okay, chapter 28. So William likes stalking too, and at this point he's at Sandringham and wanted to spend his vacation stalking instead of skiing. It was supposed to be a family vacation, so Harry and his dad, at the time Prince Charles, went to Closters to ski. And he said it was a secret that he knew that William stayed behind because he didn't want to face the wall. And the wall is a wall of reporters that all the royals always had to face while doing something public like skiing in order to be left alone for the rest of the ski trip. This was the price they paid, he said, and it was awful, and he hated it, and his father hated it. We talked about that before in previous chapters, and William hated it enough to not go. And Harry was having a great time along with his dad, and he was feeling a little guilty because his mother hated the Closters. That is where someone had died with an avalanche. As we who watched the royal fandom pretty closely over the decades knew that Charles and Diana were skiing, and there was an avalanche, and somebody in their ski group died. And I think Prince Charles had felt very guilty because he kind of urged everyone to stay. Of course, he didn't know there was going to be a death or an avalanche. He urged everyone to stay even after they maybe had wanted to go home. There was something about that. But anyway, he was having fun, and he didn't want to have fun at something or at some place where his mother wouldn't have had fun. Okay, chapter 29. This is 2001 at Balmoral. He was practicing driving, and he was driving on the country roads there. That's perfectly normal. At this point, he's 14 or 15, maybe even 15. Perfectly normal time. He was having a great time. He said he had mentioned in this chapter that he was now 6 foot tall. He'd grown 4 inches over the past school year. And how he had met up with his grandpa, who was grilling behind the lodge at Balmoral, and he smelled the venison, the sausage, and the fillets, and his granny, the queen, as we know. We have to stick a little bit of the queen in the book, right? Was famous for making her salad dressing, whipping it together, homemade salad dressing. And of course, his great-grandmother arrives at some point. That's the queen mother. He calls her Gan Gan, 101 years old at the time. She was there wearing blue and drinking a martini. Harry joined and no one noticed. So Harry wanted to do something daring, to drink a martini or just a cocktail in front of his family, and nobody even said anything or even noticed. He was disappointed. But he did feel a connection with his grandmother, his great-grandmother, I should say, at this point. He's talking about the Queen Mother. And he shared a story about Sacha Baron Cohen with her, and she was trying to understand and trying to repeat some phrase that he was famous for. He claims nobody cared when they didn't notice him drinking the cocktail, but I just think that is just being a relaxed family. There was a barbecue, they were outside. It's a lot going on to notice everything. Maybe they noticed and thought, oh, let Harry have some fun. Let Harry do that with his grandmother, great-grandmother, and he'll remember that time. That could very well be what happened. Not a big deal. I don't think nobody cared. I think he was cared for. I think this is a caveat and anecdote of my own. I think this was definitely a syndrome of having lost his mother, having great insecurities, also having a second son syndrome. I had all those things. Except it wasn't a son, it was a daughter. Daughter syndrome. Third daughter syndrome. It was even lower on the pecking order. Talk about being ignored. Anyway, back to his book. Okay. So he talks about connecting with the Queen Mother. She was the famous war queen during World War II, and she had met Winston Churchill many times and dined with him, and etc. All the wonderful things. He wished he had talked to her, asked her questions about her husband. That's Queen Elizabeth II's father, King George VI, and of course the infamous Edward VIII, who was the Queen Mother's brother-in-law, who was famously married to Wallace. And he says he wished he had asked her about her. Famous for being a divorced American. Twice divorced, I'll add. She was twice divorced. American. So yes, so he's touching a little bit on King Edward and Wallace. I think that was very intentionally put in here. I wonder, this is just my opinion and my take on this. Did he really wonder about Edward? Maybe he wished now he had asked her about Edward VII and Wallace, which is probably what he meant, because I'm sure he wasn't going to think about that at the time. My opinion. Okay, so we'll do chapter 30 also. It was a short chapter. He's back at Eton. Okay, this must be his second year, because he talks about September 11th. That's 2001. We all know what happened on that day. He sees the news there, and he's just like, what's happening? Plane, buildings, oh, must be an accident or a mistake, some tiny plane, as we all thought. Of course, everybody does remember where they were during that event. I do think even the world, not just Americans. He describes what he saw in the news, planes crashing into the Twin Towers. And some classmates said, oh my God, it's World War III. Okay, so that's the chapters 23 through 30. I'll tune in tomorrow with the next 7 or so chapters with my take. And thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. Let me know if you have any questions about The Spare, or I should say Spare by Prince Harry. I'll try to answer them. Leave them in the comment section, and please like the video if you did enjoy it. And this is the Queen of Kingsbury. I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.